Oh, we embark upon a nice Monday recap show here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am your host, Dan Vespris, and I thank you all, as always, from the bottom of my heart, underneath this, now I'm noticing, slightly stained sweatshirt for hanging out with us on your Tuesday morning. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris. We are Old Man Squad over on the brand new Blue Sky, Old Man Squad Fantasy on Instagram. Please hit that like button, rate, subscribe, do the stuff that helps, and I will be forever grateful. And literally, as I'm saying this last sentence, I just got an email with brand new Bet Online ad copy. Oh, yes, it's in, man. This Thanksgiving holiday, why not head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, Bet Online? It's a question, I think. Why not? From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to NBA and college basketball to NHL to UFC and boxing. Head to the website today to see why BetOnline is America's most trusted site for online wagering. At BetOnline, the game starts here. Ah, yes. Brand new ad copy, fresh off the press. That's the good stuff. Now we're ready to talk about fantasy basketball, I think. Let's do the thing we did before, which is the big story last night. It had to be Elfrid Payton. In addition to some guys coming back, some guys going out, Elfrid Payton put up a whopper of a fantasy line. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 21 assists, and 2 steals. Yeah, he did have 5 turnovers, but I think we can forgive him his indiscretions with 21 assists. And it puts us, from an analysis standpoint, in a little bit of a weird bind. And the reason is, we're analytical folks around here. Me, you, those of you listening. I think that's probably why you're listening to a fantasy basketball podcast to begin with. So we know that when Brandon Ingram comes back and DeJounte Murray is expected back tomorrow, what are the odds that Elfrid Payton's going to get this type of usage ever again? Extremely low. 5%. And that's 5%. Not that this is like a thing that can keep up, because obviously you're not going to keep up 21 assists. I like the odds that Elfrid Payton is a guy who lasts for more than a handful of games, extraordinarily low. Because Ingram is point forward and DeJounte is point guard, and CJ McCollum can do a little bit of that point guard stuff, although he didn't really get tasked with having to do it in this one because of Elfrid Payton. And then at some point, maybe, this is a maybe, Zion might show up again. We have no idea when. Herb Jones is floating around, but he doesn't really factor into this. So you've got Ingram and DeJounte and then Zion are kind of like the 3 guys, not in that order, that will eventually show up. And then there just won't be a point guard job anymore because they'll need floor spacers around some of these other dudes. So from an analytical standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense to add Elfrid Payton. But from a what did I just see standpoint, it makes all of the sense to add Elfrid Payton. Because, look, simple fact is the team played better when he was out there. They were a plus 10 in a game they lost by 4 when Elfrid Payton was on the court because he pushed other players into their proper spots. It's very possible. Again, I give it like a 19 out of 20 odds, 95% chance that tomorrow on Wednesday, DeJounte Murray comes back and Elfrid Payton plays 22 minutes and doesn't do anything. 95% chance. But that 5% chance that they're like, you know what, why don't we just play a really big backcourt and we'll have 2 point guards and we'll just see what happens. And McCollum will slide up to play small forward and Trey Murphy will be the power forward. And Daniel Tice and Yves Missi will split the center minutes. And so things won't be that different. It'll be Javonte Green. Maybe that's what they're going to decide. Sorry, Javonte Green and Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Brandon Boston Jr. You are the guys that are losing out in all of this, not Elfrid Payton, because what we saw from him, we just want to see if it can happen on any kind of consistent basis. Again, 5% chance. Extraordinarily low. Not a wager you want to make most of the time. But when a guy drops in out of the sky, literally just parachuted into a team, was part of their training camp, but doesn't really know what the hell is going on right now, and posts a 14, 7, and 21 game, you kind of have to just put him on your roster for a day. Call it a one-day speculative ad. And that way, your brain is properly attuned to it. Guess what? Also, tomorrow's a full card. Okay, almost. 14 out of 15 potential games happening tomorrow. So even if you pick up Elfrid Payton, you're not going to have to play him. It's not like you'll leave him on your bench because you don't know what the hell he's going to do. So to call it a no-brainer, I think, is incorrect or it's actually correct, but not because, like, typically the term no-brainer means this is something you have to do and you'd be an idiot to even think about it. This one is a no-brainer because if you use your brain, you see all of the reasons why it's not going to work. But if you just turn your brain off for a second and say, what should I do with my heart? The heart says add him for one day. And just check. Make sure that it doesn't happen again and someone else is the person that ends up getting to enjoy it. Oh, good. An Instacart's going to arrive while we're on air, so that should be an exciting development. Toronto at Detroit. Let's break down some of yesterday's card. We'll move through it at a good clip because Elfrid Payton was obviously the big story, but there were a couple other things mixed in there. Scotty Barnes, 31, 14, and 7. Again, it was just sort of a matter of time before he started to get things turned around. He's number 66 in 9-cat right now, and he will work his way somewhat up the board. Top 30 feels like a near guarantee. Anything else, we'll sort of wait and see. Jakob Poeltl, we expect him to start to peel downward over time, but that might not come until the Raptors get more healthy. No Grady Dick for this game. The question was, would anybody fill in for him? And no, not really. Scotty Barnes pretty much just took all of those shots for himself. And that's good for his fantasy game. This is a crazy one where the Raptors bench came roaring back and neither team could really seem to figure out like what lineups they should have put on the floor. RJ Barrett, points league only. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001. Ochai Agbaji was the guy we thought maybe this dude could fill in for Grady Dick. Nope. So you're just Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl in 9-cat, and then add RJ Barrett to the mix if you're playing in a points league. Detroit, Isaiah Stewart had another really nice ball game, but again, only 23 minutes. And in this particular game, it wasn't as clear why. Because the starters for the Pistons were actually dunking. Jalen Duren was part of lineups that were successful. He went for 4 blocks, 13 points, 12 boards, 4 assists. He was a plus 16. And Isaiah Stewart was a minus 16. So I admit it, I didn't watch every second of this ball game. I'll be perfectly frank with you guys because you just can't watch all of them. And this was a Detroit-Toronto game, so my heart wasn't in this one. And we knew with Cade out that Jaden Ivey would get a bunch of extra shots. He got some. We knew Malik Beasley would take a bunch of extra shots. He took them. He didn't make them, but he took them. And then the funny thing, and this is what happened in Philadelphia too, when Tobias Harris, you think he's going to go get more usage, he actually kind of steps back where like he needs the star to get him open a lot of the time. So as far as what to make of all of this, Jaden Ivey is a guy you play while Cade is out. Same with Malik Beasley. Both those guys. Ivey is a guy you're playing in punt and points formats anyway. Beasley's a guy you're not. He moves over the cut line to a streamable asset. As far as the big men rotation goes, that's the part that I think is really confusing with Detroit because Jalen Duren was getting lit up for bad defense and then actually played better defense in this ball game and still only got 25 minutes. Isaiah Stewart is on a blocks run that I don't think will continue. It feels highly unsustainable. He's blocked 10 shots in his last 3 ball games, and more importantly, he's done it in about 70 minutes. That's a crazy high block rate compared to what he's done throughout his career. But, there's also that other side of like, okay, well, maybe he's changed what his role is and he's back to playing backup center instead of any power forward and all that stuff matters. But right now his numbers are being floated by those blocks because otherwise the minutes aren't nearly high enough. And you can see what happens in the games where he doesn't block a ton of shots. That he plays 23 minutes and he'll get you, a half decent chunk of rebounds will get you 7 boards, 8 boards, something like that. But then you're hoping for what, 9 points? That's not enough. The blocks is why his numbers look really good lately. And I'll give him the fact that like the big blocks, yeah, they can float value. That's sort of what they do. But he's also shooting 73% over the last week, 86 at the free throw line, blocking 3.3 shots a game. That stuff won't hold, and then he falls off. Isaiah Stewart, we've seen this for years now. He needs 30 minutes to be a fantasy asset. It's not going to happen in 23. As far as Jalen Duren goes, I don't think you have any choice but to hang on. And as I've said before, this is probably about the 8th or 9th day in a row I've said it on the show, sell the moment that Duren has a nice ball game. And it'll happen. There's a 20-rebound game in the hopper somewhere. And then unload. See if you can get a second center on the backs of a big ball game. Charlotte, once again, rode Franz Wagner to a victory. He's got to do a lot these days with no Paolo, and he is a extraordinary sell-high candidate. He's number 12 right now. He's been a top 3 guy for like the last 2 weeks while taking every shot money can buy. We know that's not going to hold when Paolo's back. How far he drops off is sort of where the ability to sell high comes in. I think right now you could aim for a top 30, top 35 guy, and it would probably work. And I don't know that I would take anything lower than 40 or 45 right now because Paolo's not that close. So sure, Franz might slip back to that 50 range. That's a possibility. But if you're going to get another month, say, of first, second round value, and then the slip back, is it really worth it to get a guy who's top 40 the whole way through? I think I'd rather probably have Franz in that case, just because of this is a run that was unforeseen. Everybody was trying to sell me on Paolo as like, oh, this is a guy who's going to play in all 82 games this year. But you never know with crap like that. And so that didn't work. But then Franz gets the giant bump. These things happen. No Jalen Suggs, and then Gary Harris left after 7 minutes. And so the question was, would anybody pick up the pieces for these guys? The consensus, myself included, was that we should keep an eye on Anthony Black. I think other people said I had to pick him up, and people tend to be a bit more aggressive than I am. Turned out that it was more Cole Anthony than Anthony Black in this one, which I feel like we're doing a Wheel of Fortune category. Cole Anthony Black, the combination of them would have been a very nice fantasy line. I don't know what the hell the Magic team are going to do in their next ball game. I would assume that Black gets the start for Gary Harris, so continue to keep an eye on him. Goga got outplayed by Moga again in this one. And at some point, Wendell Carter Jr. has been questionable for 4 straight games, and he hasn't been able to play in any of them. This is very weird. But we're hitting that point, and I forget who I was having a conversation with. I think it was either on, I can't remember if it was on YouTube or on Twitter. That was like, Dan, you're way too low on Goga Batadze. But I remembered what last season was like when Wendell Carter Jr. was out. This is what it was like. Goga would be good for 4 games, and then Moga would be good for 3, and then back to Goga for 2, and then back to Moga for 1 or 2, and it bounced back and forth. And right now, Batadze is hovering right around the edge of the top 100 over the last 2 weeks. Number 108 over that span. Good percentages, so that's nice. And good defensive stats, but really nothing else. And the minutes are bouncing around. This was the fear. Well, the fear is back. I think, if we find out Wendell Carter Jr. is out again tomorrow, with a full card, I'd probably just not play any of them if you have that option. Goga's still the guy you trust more because he's starting, but on any given night, it can go either way. So what would I do? I'm not going to drop a guy just for the sake of dropping him, but I would certainly consider, if you're hunting for someone, I know you're looking at the waiver wire. We all are every day, that the Orlando centers are probably on the chopping block. But you know who's not? Is my guy, Jonathan. I can't even say it with a straight face. Is Jonathan Isaac, who, from a fantasy standpoint, this show's been all about waiting 5 years on Jonathan Isaac to get this thing together. And he is now, this is the healthiest he's been in like 5 seasons, basically. Outside of back-to-backs, he's pretty consistently playing 22 to 24 minutes, and that's enough. 3 threes, 6 boards, a steal, 2 blocks. He didn't shoot all that well, but 14 shots he took in this game. Like, all of that screams. And he's playing in back-to-backs. He's not playing a lot in them, but he's playing in them. I think Jonathan Isaac is an add in all formats now. For a while, I was only willing to make the add in Games Cap Roto, but if he's not taking days off for no reason, maybe the minutes are a little bit lower, but at least you're getting something. LaMelo Ball is going crazy right now. He's had a monster last week. I think he scored like 130 points over the last week or something truly nuts. His rank is not as high as you'd expect because he's shooting 45% on 27 shots a game, which is like technically a pretty bad number. And he's only at 1 steal, but he's averaging 35, 5, and 8 over that span. So that's pretty good. Musa Diabate is the last center standing for this team. Sorry, Taj Gibson. I don't count you anymore. Diabate, 32 minutes, 8 boards, 2 steals, 4 blocks. That's what you're looking for out of him. You're looking for that sort of like a, Dennis Rodman, Ben Wallace-y kind of fantasy line. I would very much stream Diabate until anybody comes back. And someone might come back soon, but without a guarantee, just roll with it. Pelicans we talked about already. Yves Missi is also worth mentioning here. He had 16, 13, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. First good game for him in about the last 7. So I'm going to take the I got to see it again approach on Missi. And if he does it again, then we'll add him. Sleeps in his own bed. Tyrese Halliburton had the line of the night. 34 points, 13 assists, 9 3-pointers, 3 steals on terrific percentages, and only 2 turnovers. It's a start is basically the only way we can frame this, but he's now back up into the 4th round in overall value, despite what has been, I think, by all accounts, an absolutely atrocious start to the year. This is why you buy low. If it does turn out to be what bed he's sleeping in, okay, great. Indy's got another couple of home games before they go back out on the road. You can buy and sell accordingly. TJ McConnell got 21 minutes. He was fine, but not great. He's sort of borderline streamable with Ben Shepherd out. And then everything else is, nothing fancy. Quentin Jackson played 32 minutes, but I don't really care. Clippers got whomped by the Celtics. Zubats and Harden were kind of the only 2 players that survived the assault, so let's keep moving there. The only footnote really being, while Norman Powell is out, I'm keeping 1/2 of one eye on Derek Jones. Does he not go by Junior anymore? Whatever, doesn't matter. Because he's been like hovering in that upper filler level range, but whatever. Boston, that was another big piece of news. Kristaps Porzingis made his season debut and played 23 minutes. That's about 5 more than I thought he was going to get in his debut. He'll slowly ramp his way up, obviously sitting back-to-backs, but you can start him. Then Porzingis clears 20 minutes. He's fantasy startable, so go ahead and get him into lineups. Peyton Pritchard got hot, so that bounced him back up the board a little bit. Nemias Keita got a bunch of garbage time and put up a big line. Also, no Al Horford, so that helped there as the primary backup to Porzingis, and then again also the blowout situation. And then we'll just sort of play it a little bit by ear with Boston. What do? I think we hold on to Horford for now. Hold on to Pritchard, White, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis. All these guys belong on rosters. Holiday belongs on rosters. They've got a lot of guys, and when we're firing up 3 balls the way they do, a lot of guys are probably going to have value. Dallas took care of Atlanta on the road. Daniel Gafford had a nice ball game. What's his rank right now? Is he back inside the top 100? Yeah, he's number 84. So sorcery. Daniel Gafford's sorcery. Doesn't need that many minutes to get there. He's at 21 minutes, and he's inside the top 90. PJ Washington is inside the top 70. He's rolling. Kyrie got a lot of shots, which might not necessarily be a good thing. Derek Lively left 11 minutes in with a flu bug. It is what it is. Let's talk about the guys that might be picking up for Luka Doncic. That's the real story in Dallas, and there's a few of them. You've got Spencer Dinwiddie, Najee Marshall, and Jaden Hardy all played bigger roles in this game. And it helped that the pace was really high, and Atlanta doesn't play much defense. Dinwiddie had 22 points on 11 shots in 36 minutes off the bench. I don't trust him because I've seen enough of his fantasy game to not trust him, but also the bench role makes me a little bit nervous. Najee Marshall is out there scoring a lot, but doing very little else. So I'm probably not going down that path in Roto either. Jaden Hardy is the one I would look the closest at, even though by all accounts he had the worst fantasy line of the three of those guys with the 6 turnovers. But just, more steals, handling the basketball, that kind of stuff, and the starting job for someone who has shown some fantasy game before. But again, I don't know if I am taking the plunge on any of these guys. And maybe that's, again, me being a little bit nervous, but you've got Overflow Wednesday coming up. They don't play again until Saturday. Schedule play, you've got the back-to-back over the weekend. That's kind of intriguing for any of those 3 dudes we just talked about, Dinwiddie, Marshall, and Hardy. But if you're thinking games cap Roto, you don't have to make a decision on these dudes for days yet. If this is the same lineup that Dallas runs out in their next ball game, the guy I would trust the most of those 3 in 9-cat is Hardy. If you're just hunting scoring, you probably go Marshall. And then Dinwiddie, I don't think I can go down that route. Jalen Johnson, I don't think anybody's even really noticed, but Jalen Johnson has gotten his turnovers kind of course corrected. They're still not great at 3.2, but it's no longer near 4. Field goal percent is up to 48, so that's almost where it needs to be. Free throw at 74, which is basically where we needed it to be. And so all of a sudden now, he's getting his turnovers under 3 away from being a second rounder. He's number 26 right now. So he's basically knocking on the door, and a couple of games of 2 or 3 turnovers instead of 4, and he will be there. The Jalens have not disappointed. If you tried to get them both, that was the way to go. Dyson Daniels, another solid ball game, 2 steals and 2 blocks. Bogdanovic up to 18 points off the bench. He's now into the role that we expected him to be in. DeAndre Hunter, 31 minutes. He took 11 shots, but he didn't make them, and that's going to kind of always be the up and down with him. I'm going to hold on to Hunter a little bit longer. I like the minutes. I like the opportunity, so we'll sort of wait this one out a little. Okongwu and Capella, I know Capella had the better ball game here with the 2 blocks, but they played the same number of minutes at 22. It's just not enough. So for Hunter, head-to-head, obviously, you sort of start everybody everywhere. If you're thinking about Roto, I'm probably going to bench DeAndre Hunter. I'll start Bogdanovic. Yeah, I feel like I'm playing a game of bleep, marry, kill here. But it's just that, and then I'm cutting the centers. So I cut the centers, bench the Hunters, start the Bogdanovic's. Actually, just one, because the other one is a real thing. Portland, this is truly the disappointment of the night, because we came into this one looking for a big Robert Williams, 25, 26-minute performance. And if he would have continued on this same path, it would have been an absolute monster of a basketball game. But he got knocked in the head, had to leave with concussion symptoms before halftime. Luckily, still finished with 4 defensive stats before he had to leave, but that's a real pisser. And now the Blazers are down to basically 0 centers. They've got Duop Reith, but they don't want to play him. So yesterday, some combination of Denny Avdia and Jabari Walker soaked up the center minutes. Jeremy Grant also left this game with a knee injury. We haven't heard anything more about it. Let's hope it's minor, but I don't know. You never want to hear knee. You never want to hear anything, but knee is particularly terrifying. And again, another reason that we wanted to sell high on Grant after 2 ball games into the season. It leaves us a lot of openings here because they were already without Ayton and Klingon and Scoot Henderson, and now down Robert Williams and Jeremy Grant. And we're really getting into the dregs of the Blazers, a team that's a little dregsy even when they're fully healthy. Shaedon Sharpe is going to take a ton of shots. He's going to be your punt field goal target. Denny Avdia is going to be kind of your well-rounded guy. I think he probably does deserve a streaming spot if all of these guys indeed miss their next ball game. And you can probably put Tamani Kamara back on rosters again because it feels like in a non-blowout, there's almost no way that he doesn't log 30-plus minutes and have to take some shots because all of these guys that shoot are out. Scoot and Grant in particular. I guess Scoot isn't taking that many shots, but Ayton takes some. There's a lot on the table, and it's heavily big man. Scoot's a smaller dude, but like 3 centers and a forward are all out, and so you're going to get more for the other centers and forwards. So streamability, Avdia, probably my first choice as the fill-in, and then Kamara. And I don't think that you're adding a traditional center on this team. And for Memphis, this was the one we were like, well, let's see what happens when they get their guys back. And then they promptly blew a team out, and nobody had to play more than about 26 minutes. Although JJJ managed to wedge 28 into this game, but everybody else was in the 20s, seemingly like 14 players deep, all in the 20s. Scottie Pippen only played 14 with Ja Morant and Marcus Smart back. He's probably going to trend towards a drop. I don't know that Marcus Smart needs to be rostered, but he's going to do enough to mess up some of these other guys. And I know Santi Aldama had 13 and 17 in this ball game, but he only played 22 minutes, and that's not enough long-term either. So the beauty of all of this is you've got these overload days and then 0 days coming up, Wednesday, Thursday. So you don't have to make any calls for a few days if you didn't want to. But my guess, my hypothesis on Memphis is that JJJ, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane are going to be the only Grizzlies worth rostering possibly throughout. Because it doesn't look like Marcus Smart is going to get there. Brandon Clark playing 25 minutes was fun, and he had a really nice fantasy line, but is that going to happen every day? Probably not. And then who else is even worth looking at? That's right. Nobody. Well, Denver had the turntables turn on them in this one. They smashed the Lakers and then went home and got smashed by the Knicks. The NBA is a weird thing, man. Knicks shot 61% in the ball game. OG Anunoby had an efficient 40. Cat had 30 and 15. Just dominated Jokic. Jalen Brunson had 17 assists. Josh Hart was perfect. Deuce was back, which meant that Campaign is no longer a streamable asset. And, normally I wouldn't start Miles McBride. You could make him a schedule play if you really wanted to. But, start the starters. Knicks are back to start the starters again. Denver got another good one out of Russell Westbrook. I don't know. Points League, he's an ad. We've said that before, so that holds. It's so hard for Russ to post true 9-category value because even when he puts up nice popcorn numbers, typically the field goal and free throw percent send him flying off a cliff into the ocean, a la Wile E. Coyote. He happened to be good in both of them in this ball game, but we know that's not going to happen again. And he's had a couple of good ball games recently, so it's going to be tempting. But if you're not punting one of the things that Russ is very bad at, then you got to pass. Peyton Watson, on the other hand, seems like his stream may have run out of juice a little bit, and perhaps this was all part of an equation that I didn't fully factor in, is this isn't a guy that's ever had to play big minutes for a long stretch of time. And so his fill-in for Aaron Gordon was, top 70, top 80 for a week or two, and then now slipping back towards just outside the top 100 kind of range. And this one was a bad one, obviously. But overall, hanging out near 100, 115 is fine, but we could potentially do better. So again, not to say that you need to go out immediately and drop Peyton Watson. I know this is a bad ball game, but if someone cool pops up, that's a potential drop, even though the news did come out yesterday that Aaron Gordon doesn't have a timetable yet. So it could get better. He's been a pretty good efficiency guy and defensive stats guy. It's not all bad, but we have seen the upside capped a little bit by just general energy and a return to medium usage from Jamal Murray. And then lately, Russell Westbrook has been kind of a thorn in the side there. Brooklyn got another win, although at what cost? Cam Johnson left early with an ankle injury. Cam Thomas left midway with a back injury. The Cams both went down. Dennis Schroeder went nuts. But I don't think you can do anything with the Nets until we actually know who's playing in their next ball game. So if Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson are in, and then everybody else is out, well, let's see. Ben Simmons would likely be back. What does Brooklyn's schedule look like? This was the second half of a back-to-back. No. Yes, this was the second half of a back-to-back. They have another back-to-back next Sunday, Monday again. But the games in between there are not. So, I mean, uh-oh. We just have an internet chunk out. Hopefully things are still working right here. In any event, like Zaire Williams had 19 and 10 as the full-time center on this team, or Jalen Wilson was the center, whatever you want to call those guys. Those dudes are both very streamable if they're going to play 38 to 40 minutes a ball game, because the other three options for that area on the floor are all gone. Noah Clowney was out, Ben Simmons was out, Nick Claxton was out. But those guys might be back. Maybe not by tomorrow, but again, it's overload day, but perhaps by their next one on Friday. So I don't know that we can necessarily do anything here, but Zaire Williams and Jalen Wilson each looked like really nice injury pickups if we get to that point. So you kind of have to like stick it on the back burner a little bit and then figure it out later on. So in fact, let's just like make a footnote to ourselves. Uh-oh. Oh, no, it's the G Sheets, I think, that went down. Oh, no, Google Drive is dead. Are we back now? All right, Google Drive once again lives. So let's put Zaire Williams and Jalen Wilson on our board. I think I may have spelled that wrong. Yeah, I'm going to do this in real time, and it's screw up the spelling while I'm trying to talk to you guys and type. And so that's if the whole Nets front court is out. If Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson are out, then they might even get as far as Shake Milton down the board, but it's certainly going to mean a ton of Dennis Schroeder in that instance. And you'll probably get enough Trendon Watford to think about it. But again, we really can't do anything with the Nets until we find out the status of 5 injured guys, because seemingly all of them are day-to-day. Unusual, but that's the case. So do nothing for the moment, but have the sort of trigger finger ready on these guys that stepped up big. Warriors seem like maybe they didn't take this game seriously, or maybe they're just kind of coming back down to earth a little bit after a hot start. Andrew Wiggins should probably be held. He's been warm enough lately to deserve it. Hold on to Draymond. It's not pretty, but it's just barely good enough. And if you're punting points, that's when Draymond kind of always made the most sense. Buddy Hield, go ahead and put him on the waiver wire. No one's going to pick him up right now. You can pick him up when he gets hot again. And then I don't care about Lindy Waters playing 28 minutes. That means nothing to me. OKC beats Sacramento. Kings, I think, have lost 4 games in a row now. Jalen Williams is incredible, and he would have chased down Cat if Cat didn't have such a big ball game himself. So Jalen stayed in that number 6 spot in 9 Cat. What a year he's having so far. He's one of the most efficient players in all of fantasy basketball, all of reality basketball. Jalen Williams, is at 22 points, 2 threes, 6.5 boards, 5.2 assists, 2.2 steals, 1 block, 52 from the field, 84 free throw line, 2.3 turnovers. He is literally 0.4 turnovers away from being a positive in all 9 categories. He's new Kawhi. He's new Kawhi Leonard. This is like what the line you wanted to get out of Kawhi this year. Maybe a little bit more scoring. Slightly better free throws. Kawhi would be slightly better at the foul line. But he's new Kawhi for fantasy. Lou Dort did not score. Didn't make a shot for the second consecutive ball game, but he did have 10 rebounds. And, come on. We all knew that the Dort slowdown was going to happen. But here's the thing. He's actually due for a bounce back. Much as I don't like the Lou Dort experience, he's due to bounce back. He's now shooting at just 41.8% from the field. That's a number that'll probably come back up a little bit. Still managing to hang on to top 80 value. Some of that's because of the 0.7 turnovers or the 2 defensive stats. But however you get there, he's there. So I you're going to see Dort get dropped, I think, in a bunch of spots. And I would probably pick him up because it still just seems like he's more relevant this season. Hartenstein, I think he got scratched in the eye in this game, but he was fine. Ended up with a double-double, kind of a quiet double-double, but, only disappointing because we know how much he can do in 32 minutes. And taking 14 shots is an amazing, amazing sign for what he's likely to do. And the Kings are back to being maybe the most boring team. Not the most, but they're certainly in that upper pantheon of boredom. Started Keon Ellis instead of Kevin Huerter. It didn't change their fortunes at all. You're playing DeMar, you're playing De'Aaron Fox, you're playing Domantas Sabonis, you're playing Keegan Murray, and if you need a filler level guy, you'd play Malik Monk, but I don't. And also, didn't we kind of know a game like this or 2 or 3 was going to be coming for De'Aaron Fox after the absurd run he went on when everybody got hurt? That's why you sell high when guys are going usage bananas. That was the move. Fox's free throws, by the way, are still too high right now. So he's still trending downward at number 29. Hopefully you guys were able to move him when he was scoring 60 points a ball game. That was crazy. Wrapping it up, B. Wrap it up, B. That's our show. That's our show. We tried to do the big stuff right at the beginning, but if you just wanted to sort of quick surmise the biggest things from yesterday, Elfrid Payton is probably the biggest thing. Jonathan Isaac being good enough every single day is a thing. Diabate being a fun fill-in is a thing. Kristaps Porzingis making his return and playing enough minutes to be startable is a thing. What else are we forgetting here? Bogdan Bogdanovic, I think, is now startable. Portland being completely banged up. Same with Brooklyn being super banged up. So those are teams that you want to watch the injury report extremely closely. And I think those are probably the big ones from yesterday that apparently took us 37 minutes to do, and then I just did it in 22 seconds. Maybe I don't need to do full shows anymore. I kid. I know you guys want context, and there's other stuff that goes on. I'm Dan Bespris. We're going to do another show in about an hour and 20 minutes or so with my good buddy Adam King. It's a mailbag show. I put out a tweet yesterday asking for questions. You still have an opportunity over the next hour and change to get your question in. We are not going to be rapid firing them. We're each going to pick 2 or 3 of our absolute favorites and talk about kind of the big picture type of stuff, the things we believe that will appeal and apply to as many leagues as possible. So that mailbag show is coming up very soon. Get those questions in over on Twitter at Dan Bespris. Follow Old Man Squad on Blue Sky if that's where you're at. Hit that like button on the way out. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get the alert when our next one drops, however you're taking in the content. And please, Apple, Spotify listeners, hit that 5-star review so we can keep moving up the boards. Have a great couple of hours. We'll be back with you on that mailbag show in just a little bit. I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. I'll see you soon.